The wind in Chicago doesn't just blow, it bites. I stood on the porch of my brand new condo, my fingers numb as I fumbled with my keys, unaware that I was about to walk into the ultimate family betrayal. I spent 15 years grinding to afford this home, but as the door swung open, I realized my mother hadn't just used her spare key. She had started a war that would only end with a cold dose of family karma. Welcome to Prime Karma Stories, your home for the most satisfying tales of revenge and justice. We dive deep into family drama and life lessons that prove karma always finds its way. I had just landed after a 6-hour delay at O'Hare, and I was exhausted to my core. I wanted the smell of my expensive vanilla candles, the silence of my soundproofed walls, and the warmth of the home I had built with my own sweat and tears. But when I reached for the handle, my key wouldn't even enter the slot. I looked at the lock in the dim porch light. It wasn't mine. The sleek, digital deadbolt I'd installed was gone, replaced by a cheap brass hardware store special. Before I could even wrap my head around it, the door swung open. I wasn't greeted by my security system. I was greeted by my mother, Martha. She stood there in a cardigan I'd bought her for Christmas, holding a glass of my most expensive Napa Cabernet. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked annoyed. "Lauren, you're early," she said, her voice dripping with that practiced, martyr-like disappointment she'd used to control me since I was a child. "We thought you were staying in London until Friday." "Mom, why is there a different lock on my door?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Don't start with a tone, Lauren." Martha sighed, stepping back but not exactly inviting me in. "It's been an emergency. A real one. Not one of your work emergencies." A poor Brody and Kyle were literally hours away from a shelter. I pushed past her, my boots clicking on the hardwood floor I'd spent months picking out. The sight that met me in the living room made my stomach turn. My minimalist white oasis was gone. In its place was a graveyard of fast food bags, empty soda cans, and 2 massive, stained recliners that definitely didn't belong to me. Brody and Kyle, my deadbeat cousins, were sprawled out like they owned the place. Brody had his greasy feet up on my marble coffee table, and Kyle, this was the part that made my blood run cold, was using my $3,000 MacBook Pro, my work lifeline. He was playing some loud, flashing video game, his orange-dusted fingers leaving permanent stains on the silver keys. "Yo, Lauren's back," Brody said, not even looking away from the screen. "Tell her the Wi-Fi password is slow. I can't even stream in 4K. I turned to my mother, my vision blurring with rage. "Mom, out. Now. Get them out." Martha's face crumbled instantly into weaponized pity. "How can you be so cold? You have 3 bedrooms, Lauren, and these boys have nothing. Their father kicked them out. I wasn't going to let my own nephews sleep in a van in a Chicago winter. It's just for a few months until they get on their feet." I realized then that to Martha, I wasn't a person or a successful daughter. I was a resource to be harvested for her golden relatives. "I'm calling the police," I whispered, reaching for my phone. Martha stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "Go ahead. Call them. But I've already told the neighbors they're staying here, and Brenda is already on her way with the rest of their things." My heart stopped. "Aunt Brenda? She needed a place too, Lauren," Mom said with a smug smile. "Family sticks together, whether you like it or not." I thought the invasion was over, but as I heard the heavy sound of a suitcase thudding against the floor in the hallway, I realized the nightmare was only just beginning. Aunt Brenda didn't just walk into my home, she colonized it. Before I could even get my suitcase up the stairs, she was already unboxing a set of dusty ceramic roosters in my ultra-modern kitchen. "It felt so cold in here, Lauren," she said, her voice a saccharine blend of pity and judgment, as she shoved my designer espresso machine to the side to make room for a stained crock pot. "A home needs a woman's touch, not just whatever this corporate gallery look is you've got going on." For the next 48 hours, my life became a living hell. Chicago was experiencing a polar vortex, with temperatures dropping well below 0, and inside my condo, The heat was rising for all the wrong reasons. Brody and Kyle had turned my guest rooms into gaming dens, the smell of stale pizza and unwashed gym clothes beginning to seep through the vents. They didn't just stay in their rooms, though. They treated the entire place like a fraternity house. I'd walk into the kitchen at midnight to find Brody eating my expensive, organic groceries straight from the containers, or Kyle sprawled on the floor, using my silk throw pillows as footrests. Every time I tried to set a boundary, Martha was there, her hand on her chest, playing the martyr card. Lauren, their family, they've been through so much trauma. Can't you just be the bigger person for once? Look at all you have. You're practically a millionaire compared to them. A little bit of sharing won't kill you. The trauma she referred to was the fact that Brody and Kyle had been fired from 3 different gigs in 6 months because they couldn't bother to show up on time. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were victims of their own laziness, and my mother was forcing me to subsidize it. The breaking point didn't happen because of a dirty dish or a loud game. It happened on Thursday morning. I had a high-stakes board meeting over Zoom, and I needed my home office, the one room I had strictly forbidden them from entering. I walked toward the door, my heart already tight with anxiety, only to find it unlocked. I pushed the door open and froze. Kyle was sitting in my ergonomic chair, his feet on my mahogany desk. But he wasn't playing games this time. He was holding a stack of mail, my private, confidential mail, that had been sitting in my desk drawer. "Wow, Lauren," Kyle said, a greasy smirk on his face as he waved a paper in the air. "I didn't realize a marketing consultant made 6 figures. And that year-end bonus? Man, you're really holding out on us." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Get out of my office and put that down." "Don't be like that," Martha said, appearing in the doorway behind me. She didn't look shocked that Kyle had broken into my desk. She looked curious. Kyle was just looking for a pen, and he happened to see it. "Honestly, Lauren, I'm disappointed. You told me you couldn't afford to pay for Brenda's dental work last month, but according to this bank statement, you have more than enough in your savings. Why are you being so greedy with your own blood?" I stared at them, my mother defending a thief, and my cousin gloating over my private financial life. The numbness I'd felt when I first saw the locks changed was gone. It was replaced by a cold, sharp, and professional clarity. I realized in that moment that I couldn't argue with them. I couldn't appeal to their morality because they didn't have any. To them, my hard work was a communal pot, and I was just the unfortunate person tasked with filling it. "You're right, Mom," I said, my voice suddenly calm, flat, and terrifyingly polite. "Family shouldn't have secrets." Martha's eyes lit up with victory. She thought she'd finally broken me. She thought she'd guilt-tripped me into being their permanent ATM. "I'm going to go to a hotel for the night to clear my head," I continued, closing my laptop and sliding it into my bag. "Since we're all family here, I trust you guys can look after the place while I'm gone. I'll leave the smart home system running so you don't have to worry about the security codes." "That's my girl," Martha beamed, reaching out to pat my cheek. I pulled away before she could touch me. As I walked out into the freezing Chicago wind, I didn't feel the cold. I felt a sense of purpose. They thought they had just won the lottery. What they didn't realize was that they had just given me every legal and emotional reason I needed to pull the trigger on the most satisfying trap of their lives. I wasn't going to the hotel to cry. I was going to my iPad to open the smart home app. I checked into a hotel 3 miles away, but I wasn't there to sleep. I sat at the small desk in my room, the glow of my iPad the only light in the space. For the first time in days, it was quiet. No smell of greasy fast food, no sound of mindless video games, no passive-aggressive comments from Aunt Brenda about my sterile lifestyle. The silence felt like a luxury I'd had to pay for twice. I opened my smart home app and synced the 4K camera feeds. It felt like watching a reality show where the contestants were slowly destroying my life. On the screen, the living room looked like a war zone. Brody had moved my white Italian leather sofa to make more room for his gaming setup, and Kyle was currently using my expensive crystal decanter to drink orange soda. In the kitchen, Aunt Brenda was taking down my framed architectural prints, replacing them with her "Bless This Mess" wooden signs. "It's finally a home, isn't it?" I heard my mother say through the audio feed. She was sitting at my kitchen island, looking around with a smug sense of accomplishment. Lauren just didn't know how to live. She was too focused on her career to realize that family is the only thing that matters. Family is the only thing that matters, I whispered to the empty hotel room. "Okay, Mom, let's see how much family matters when the resource stops providing." "Oh, you see, I solve problems for a living. In the corporate world, I'm the one they call when a contract is messy or a project is failing. I don't get angry. I get analytical." And as I watched Kyle try to guess the password to my office safe, I stopped being the selfish daughter and started being the CEO of my own life. They thought they had checkmated me with guilt. They thought that because they were inside and I was outside, they had won. But they forgot one crucial detail. My condo is technically a corporate housing asset owned by my consulting firm. By changing the locks and moving in without a signed lease or a single dollar of rent, they hadn't become tenants. In the eyes of Illinois law, they were guests who had overstayed their welcome, and guests don't have the same rights as tenants. I began configuring the away mode on my smart system. I wasn't just turning off the lights. I was setting up a digital perimeter. I programmed the smart locks to revoke all temporary codes at midnight. I set the smart fridge, the one stocked with $500 of my groceries, to child lock via the app. If they wanted to eat, they'd have to find a way to bypass a commercial-grade electronic lock. But the real kill switch was the thermostat. It was February in Chicago, and the temperature was predicted to hit 10 below zero that night. I set the smart climate control to a steady, unchangeable 50 degrees. Cold enough to be miserable, but just warm enough to keep the pipes from freezing. I locked the control panel with a 16-digit encrypted key they'd never guess. Before I trigger the final move, I have to ask, has a family member ever treated your success like it was their birthright? Have you ever been made to feel guilty for working hard while they sat back and waited for a handout? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one, and it's time we stop letting family be an excuse for abuse. And if you believe that hard work deserves respect, hit that subscribe button right now to join the Prime Karma Stories community. As the clock struck midnight, I sat back and watched the iPad. The lights in the condo flickered and dimmed to 10%. The hum of the furnace died down. I saw Brody shiver and pull a blanket over his shoulders. I saw Martha look at the thermostat with a confused expression. The trap was set. They thought they had moved into a mansion. They were about to realize they were trapped in a very expensive, very cold cage. And the best part? I was going to watch every second of their realization in 4K. By 2 a.m., the temperature inside my condo had dropped to a crisp 50 degrees. In the brutal Chicago winter, that's not just chilly, it's a physical weight. On my iPad, I watched the Deadbeat Cousins through the crystal-clear 4K feed. Brody was wrapped in 3 of my luxury cashmere throws, shivering so hard his teeth were practically chattering into the microphone. Kyle was at the kitchen island, frantically pulling at the handle of my smart fridge, his face twisted in a mix of hunger and disbelief. "It won't open, Ma," Kyle yelled, his breath visible in the dim 10% light I'd allotted them. "The digital screen says unauthorized access." She locked us out of the food. Martha was pacing the living room, her breath hitching. She looked less like a martyr now, and more like a cornered animal. She picked up her phone to call me for the 20th time, but I just watched the screen glow and then go dark. I wasn't her daughter anymore. I was the landlord. I wasn't the selfish one. I was the one who paid the electric bill they were currently wasting. Finally, I hit the intercom button on my app. My voice piped through the hidden ceiling speakers, cold and professional. "Mom, I've been watching the feed. I saw Kyle try to break into my office safe. I saw Brody ash on my rugs. And I saw Aunt Brenda taking down my art." They all froze, looking up at the smoke detectors like they'd just heard the voice of God. "This isn't a family home," I continued. my voice flat. This is a corporate asset. And because there is no signed lease, and you've damaged my property, I've already alerted the building's HOA and security. In 10 minutes, the local precinct will be there to escort unauthorized trespassers from the premises. You can leave now on your own, or you can leave in handcuffs in front of all my neighbors. The panic was instantaneous. Aunt Brenda started shrieking about disrespect, but she was already grabbing her bags. She knew that in Chicago, being homeless is a tragedy, but being arrested for trespassing in a luxury condo is a permanent stain. Kyle and Brody didn't even wait for Martha's permission. They grabbed their gaming rigs and bolted for the door, terrified of a police record that would end their deadbeat lifestyle for good. Martha was the last one left. She stood in the center of my darkened living room, looking directly into the camera lens. "You'll regret this, Lauren," she whispered. "You've chosen your money over your blood." "No, Mom," I said, watching her silhouette through the screen. "I chose my peace over your chaos. Enjoy the walk to the hotel. I hear the wind chill is 30 below tonight." The heavy click of the front door echoed through my iPad speakers. They were gone. I sat in my quiet hotel room and felt a wave of relief so intense, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding for days. This family betrayal had cost me a few $1,000s in repairs, but the family karma I'd just delivered was priceless. By 8 a.m. the next morning, I had a professional cleaning crew at the door and a locksmith installing a biometric scanner that only recognized one thumbprint, mine. I walked into my kitchen, the heat back at a perfect 72 degrees, and opened my fridge. It was full, it was cold, and it was mine. The most powerful punishment for people who feel entitled to your life isn't a shouting match. It's total, silent withdrawal. I haven't answered their calls since. I'm not the good daughter anymore, and honestly, I've never felt better.